Today, we're talking the top buys and sells for fantasy football ahead of week 10. And when you're making your deals this week, be sure to use our trade calculator at yardsperfantasy.com. It's fully customizable, it's free to use, and you'll never lose a trade again. Find it now at yardsperfantasy.com/trade-calculator. Jaylen Waddle fantasy managers are tired. They've been stuck in a desert with no water for weeks. It's hot. The sun is beating down on them 20 hours a day, and the hallucinations are getting worse. They're just laying there, barely able to move, watching Jaylen Waddle score a measly 8.2 fantasy points per game. He hasn't scored inside the top 35 wide receivers since week 1 and not inside the top 45 since week 2. They are so desperate to get out of the Jaylen Waddle desert that they will do anything to make it happen. And that's where we swoop in and save the day. We can be that lifeline. We can bring them that bucket of water they are so desperate for and lead them out of that scorching desert. But it's not just a selfless act. We win too. That's because we know what Jaylen Waddle can do. And we know it's only a matter of time before he gets it right. And if he doesn't, you know what? It won't matter because we didn't have to give up much to get him. Remember, Jaylen Waddle has only played 4 games with Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback this season. One of them, he went for 109 yards. And Waddle has always been more of a boom-bust play anyway. So one smash and a couple of stinkers isn't that abnormal. In his previous 3 seasons, Jaylen Waddle has finished as the wide receiver 15 in fantasy points per game, the wide receiver 12, and the wide receiver 21. He didn't suddenly get bad at football at age 25. The Dolphins' offense showed signs of life against the Bills and should only go up from here now that Tua has been back for a couple of weeks. And looking ahead, the Dolphins' next 3 opponents are the Rams, Raiders, and Patriots. So now would be the time to get Jaylen Waddle before that schedule opens up and his production returns to normal. TJ Hockenson made his debut in week 9, catching 3 of 4 targets for 27 yards and a touchdown against the Colts. He didn't light up the scoreboard, but it was an encouraging outing. He looked healthy and he was involved. The Vikings targeted him once in the red zone, and he even had a 7-yard gain called back by penalty. He played 60% of the snaps, a number that's only going to rise over the next few weeks. Hockenson's going to fit perfectly into an offense that's already playing at a high level this year. He'll be that high-end number 2 option in the passing game that they just haven't been able to get from Jordan Addison or Jalen Nailor. I mean, this is a guy who's finished as a top 7 tight end in 4 straight seasons. That includes tight end 4 and tight end 2 in 2022 and 2023 with the Vikings. And a look at the schedule reveals a juicy matchup against the Jaguars in week 10, plus games against the Falcons, Packers, and Seahawks, who are all top 12 in most fantasy points per game allowed to the tight end position this season. Last week, I talked about wanting to buy all Colts players with the news of the quarterback change from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco. But this week, I want to specifically focus on Josh Downs. With Michael Pittman battling a back injury that he's been dealing with all season, Josh Downs has emerged as the clear number 1 option in the passing game for the Colts. And he gave us a fine 12 fantasy points in week 9, but that came against a tough Vikings defense that harassed Joe Flacco all night long. However, Downs was the guy that Flacco was looking to more often than not. He led the team with a 33% target share while accounting for about 1/3 of the team's air yards. That usage is going to equal big-time production for Josh Downs moving forward. The Colts trust Joe Flacco to throw the ball at volume. He's averaged 36 pass attempts in 3 starts, and he completes his passes at a normal rate, not the sub 50% that they were dealing with when Anthony Richardson was the guy. Josh Downs' 12 points in week 9 was his floor. He's only going up from here. He should be considered a high-end wide receiver 2 for the rest of the year. And if you believe Josh Downs performs well this week against the Bills, then you can play this pick'em on Underdog. Lock in your pick now and use promo code YARDSPER to get a free pick and a deposit offer of up to $1,000. That's promo code YARDSPER on Underdog. Let's get it. DeAndre Swift has done an incredible job turning around his slow and inefficient start to the season. He hasn't finished with fewer than 14 fantasy points since week 3, and he's currently the RB16 in fantasy points per game. However, he has done that by beating up on the Rams, Panthers, Jaguars, Commanders, and Cardinals. All of those defenses rank in the bottom half of the league in fantasy points allowed to the running back position. And looking ahead, things are about to get much tougher for DeAndre Swift and the Bears offense. Sure, they get another cupcake in the Patriots in week 10, but then they see the Vikings twice, the Lions twice, the Packers, and the 49ers. All of those teams are near the top of the league in fewest fantasy points allowed to running backs. And the two teams they played twice, the Lions and the Vikings, they're in the top 6. Not only that, those are all good teams with good offenses that will likely force the Bears to play more pass heavy and potentially abandon the run game while playing in comeback mode. And the Bears often like to turn to Roschon Johnson in those passing game situations too. And case in point, Roschon Johnson is coming off a season-high snap share in a game that the Cardinals just lost by 20 points to the Cardinals. Now, I'm not saying that DeAndre Swift is going to tank your season or he's going to revert back to the guy that he was in the first 3 weeks, but the going is certainly going to get tougher. He's at least worth putting on your trade block, engaging interest.